All right, so today we are going to move to macroeconomics. Right, so far, so we have reviewed the micro, okay? So in this lecture, I'm going to give you a big picture. What are we going to discuss? What are we going to cover in the rest of the semester? Also, just usually, so what's the macroeconomics is about, right? And here is the roadmap. What are we going to study? Okay. So this includes we trying to differentiate between macro, so which is the main topic of this class, versus micro. So that's what you reviewed before. Okay. And then, so we are going to look at business cycle versus long-run economic growth, right? So those, like I just mentioned earlier, so those are two most fundamental issue in macroeconomics. So now we are going to have a quick idea what they means, okay? And then, so we are going to look at price, and then we are going to differentiate between inflation and deflation. And lastly, we look at open economy. But for each topic, usually the way we go is, so first, I just show you the facts. I mean, here's a review. Show you the facts. The second is we ask, so why it's important or why we care about this topic, right? If it is not relevant, not important, why we spend effort to study those topics, right? So I'm going to convince you. So again, so this is a preview. And then following this lecture, so we will have detailed explanation for pretty much every single concept we are going to preview today, right? Now, first thing first. So you may want to guess, right? So again, so if you have no idea, that's fine. So that's completely fine. That's one why you started with me. So you may want to guess what is the current inflation and what is the current unemployment rate, right? So those are the two very important macroeconomic indicators. They have been closely watched by Wall Street, by the government, and even by Main Street, right? Okay, so you may want to click this link to see, so what is the actual number to compare with what was your guess, right? All right, now let me just start with this lecture with the origin of macroeconomics, right? So in some sense, macroeconomics largely happens during the time of Great Depression. In the United States, at that point of time, so President Hoover, he was the president. Right? And so end of 1920s, early of 1930, right? So from your history class, you probably heard, so the US was hit by the Great Depression, right? So I'm going to show you some picture later to just remind you what happens in the United States, right? Back then, so when we say economics, usually we were thinking about microeconomics. And the microeconomics is like what we just reviewed for this class. And in microeconomics, there's a key concept or key things, so we studied, which is, so the market is going to solve all the problems. Right? So we have market appearing. So we have invisible hand. Okay? So this invisible hand is going to guide us through the complicated economic situation. Okay, so eventually we are going to reach the equilibrium. So that was the conventional wisdom, or that was a leading theory back in the days of President Hoover. Okay. But then, so unfortunately, so this classical economic theory or microeconomics didn't help us to solve the Great Depression. And even worse, so it makes the problem more significant, right? So just give a quick sense, right? So usually think about the individual, right? So usually, so we want to have a balanced budget, meaning, so you're going to spend based on your income, right? And then, so whenever you have a shock, okay, meaning it's like a negative income shock, usually as an individual, so you want to tighten your belt, right? So you want to go through this difficult time, right? And then, so during President Hoover's times, so because of the idea of economics, and then so they were thinking, okay, so as a country or as a so the economy as a whole, so we should do the same things. And the meaning, so the leading policy recommendation back then was, okay, so the economy was hit by a great shock, which is like Great Depression. And then so the government needs to do their best to balance the budget to just prevent the government to bankrupt, right? And then so what they did back then is, in order to keep the balance, keep the budget balance. So what they did is, so they increased tax and decrease government spending, right? So for the government, increase tax, just think about, so they're trying to get more income. And the decrease government spending is just reduce their spending, right? So that help you to dealing with this crisis. But later, as we learn modern macroeconomics, and we should realize, so this is going to make the problem worse. Because if you increase tax, so that's going to depress the economy. In a sense, it's going to reduce investment, right? Why? Because if it's a higher tax, so my incentive to work hard to do investment is going to decrease, right? On the other hand, the government spending decrease, so that's going to reduce demand. Okay, so that makes the problem even worse. But to summarize, so back then, so President Hoover's failure, okay, so we can't blame too much because so microeconomics or self-correcting, or we call the invisible hand. So that was the leading economic theory during the time of Great Depression, right? So, but nevertheless, because of his policy failures, so history so coined the term called Hooverville. So essentially, those slums, right, caused by Hoover's policy failures, right? But again, so we should read this part of history very carefully, because largely because back then economists didn't have a good understanding how macroeconomy works. Okay. Now, let me just give you examples to understand the difference between micro and macro, right? So let's just look at a couple of examples. The first example, okay, should I go to business school or take a job right now? Okay. So this is a typical micro question, right? And this question, so involves, what this involves? Usually involves trade-off, right? And involves opportunity costs, right? Okay, because what is the opportunity cost if I go to business school? Or what is the opportunity cost if I take a job? I go to business school and then I foregone the wage. I go to take a job and then so I foregone the opportunity, like a promotion, better job, right? And then so I just trade off the gain and the loss, right? I think in the margin, okay? But now what's the macroeconomic questions? So the counterpart of this macro question is, so you may be wondering how many people are employed in the economy. Like currently, so the unemployment rate in the United States is pretty low, right? And then so what does that mean? And why we cares? Okay, so those are macro questions, right? So now let's just go to the other one. Let's go to the bottom. What determines whether Citibank opens a new office in Shanghai? Or you can replace this with what determines whether Bank of America, BOA, opened a new branch in Omaha, right? And again, so this is for individual, but this is individual business, right? So they was think about the trade-offs, the opportunity cost. I opened a new office, what is the cost? What's the benefit, right? So like say, for example, so we are long-term customer of Bank of America, okay? So when we moved to Omaha, when they find out there was no Bank of American office, it creates lots of hassles, right? And but then so you may be wondering why Bank of America didn't want to open the office in Omaha. Certainly they was trading off the cost and the benefit, right? Okay, So now the counterpart of this question in terms of macro, what determines overall trade in goods, service, financial assets between the United States and the rest of the world? Okay. So here is just we are talking about many business. Okay. So many business doing trade with their foreign counterparts. Right? So these are macro questions. Okay. For now, you have a sense what is micro and what is macro questions. But at the moment, usually, so you have a feeling or illusion. Right? Illusion probably the strong word that says you have an incorrect or partial picture. It feels like, oh, so isn't that macro is a simple summation of micro? Just look at here. Here we look at one individual, their job decision. Now here, on the right-hand side, we look at many people. And here we look at one business, Bank of America, Citibank, or whatever. And the right-hand side, we look at many businesses. Okay? It sounds like a simple summation. Now I want to pause and give you a warning. Okay? If it's that simple, and then so we don't need bother to come to the class to study macro, right? If that is simple, and then so we won't see Hoover view, or so we won't have the problem of Great Depression, right? So as a matter of fact, most of the time, macro is not a simple summation. Okay, here is a famous example. It's called paradox of thrifty. Just think about yourself. Right? So if the economy is in a recession, again, so you may not exactly know what does recession means. Recession. Okay, you may not exactly know what that means. So basically, it just means the economy is not doing well, okay? And usually that means so you may have a high chance to lose your job, or you may have a high chance to get a pay cut. All right, or if you don't have a job, if you are college graduate students looking for a job on the market, so this usually means so your chance to get a job getting slimmer, gets harder. Okay? If that is the case, from individual point of view, or from our microeconomic theory, we just reviewed or just learned, so usually the right decision or the rational decision or even the optimal decision for us is to save, right? Why you want to save? You need to prepare for future rainy day, right? Because you may lose a job, you may have a reduced income, right? So you want to save, cut your spending just in case you did lose your job, right? Okay, so this is from individual point of view. So this is what we call like thrifty. So you need to prepare for the worst to come. Okay. But now, if everyone do the same thing, and now we move from microeconomics to macroeconomics. So if everybody do the same things, tighten their belt, reduce their spending, save. Now what that means? So that means, so economy-wise, the demand is going to reduce. So that's going to affect the business. That just means the business, they will lose their customer. So they will lose their revenue. And then, so what the business will do, so they kind of forced to shrink their size. So they must lay off some workers. They must cut their spending. Now, to summarize, what's the difference? So when we look at individual, right? So when we start the discussion, there was a fear, right? So we were fearing, we was worried about the possibility of losing job. And then so we cut our spending. Now, if we look at macro side, because everyone do this rational and optimal decision from individual point of view, right? But then suddenly the fear materialized. Do you see the difference? Right? So we start from micro point of view. So you just worry about the rainy day. And then So you do some action. And then from micro point of view, it's rational, it's optimal, or it's the right decision. But then, so collectively, so everyone do these things, and then so you turn this fear, turn this possibility into reality. All right? So that's the difference between micro and macro. Also, this is the main difference between economics or like social science regarding to other science, significant physics or significant weather, right? So like here, so your individual behavior can turn this possibility into reality. But in physical world, usually it's very difficult for us to change the weather, right? Over long term, yes, we have climate change, but in short term, so can your individual behavior change the weather? Usually no, right? So that's the difference. Anyway, to summarize, macro is not a simple summation of micro, but certainly macro, particularly modern macroeconomics, is built upon microeconomic theory. Or in other words, so we still rely on those macro principles to understand we still rely on those micro principles to understand macro issue. Or in other words, so we have many rational decision-making individuals. But we are trying to understand if we bring them together, how is the aggregate behavior different from individual behavior? So that's the difference, right? The big picture of the original macro before 1930, so that was the time of Great Depression. So the conventional wisdom at that point was that so the economy has the ability to self-regulate itself, right? This is largely work through the invisible hand. And after 1930, and particularly the Great Depression, forced economies to think hard. What caused the macroeconomic problem? What we can do, or what should we do, right? And then, so we have this emergence of modern macroeconomics, and usually this is called Keynesian economics. Okay, so it's named after John Maynard Keynes. He's the famous British economist. He spent a lot of time and effort to understand the cause of the Great Depression. And his main theory or main thesis is that economic slump or the economic trouble usually is caused by, here we said, inadequate spending. That just means, so he believed most of the trouble is caused by weak demand. Because remember, so we have demand versus supply. Okay, so we have weak demand and then cause a problem. And then the government can mitigate the potential problem of the recession or slump through some policy, right? So that's the main difference. And here, this slide just give you an idea, the importance of deep understanding how macroeconomy works. Okay. So we have two time series. One, this is around the time of 2008. The other is 1929, right? So 1929, so this we call the Great Depression, right? And 2008, so we have, actually we call it Great Recession. And this 2008 Great Recession is considered worst recession since Great Depression. But now from this comparison, we can see the huge difference or the advancement in understanding our macroeconomy. How we see that? So the starting point is the onset of the crisis. Okay, so here I define crisis as when the economy hit by recession. All right. And then, so we just keep track what happens since the beginning of the crisis. And this is Great Depression. And the way we track is to look at world industry output. And we just normalize the beginning as 100. So basically it just says, okay, since the economy was hit by Great Depression or Great Recession, what does the world output look like? And certainly decline, right? But eventually pick up. Now the difference between 2008 and 1929 is that, so 1929, the recession or the trouble caused to world economy is much deeper and much longer, right? Because the Great Depression, you can see in the worst day, the world lost almost 40% of output or production capacity. And so this actually, it lasts for more than 10 years before we recover. Now, 2008, so yes, it was really bad. It's worse since Great Depression, but the recession is much shallower. So the loss, the worst day is around 10%, and we fully recover in less than 3 years, right? So summarize, so Great Recession, or the most recent one compared to Great Depression. So the damage is smaller and is quicker. And what is behind these two different episodes? It's largely because now, so when we face the worst recession since Great Depression, so we have more powerful tool. We have better understanding how our economy works, how should we respond, right? So that just highlight the importance of macroeconomic theory, right? Here I just share with you a famous quote by John Maynard Keynes, so who is considered the founding father of modern macroeconomics, right? And he said famously, in the long run, we are all dead. Okay? Yes, physically, no one is immortal, right? But so literally what he means is, so let's go back to previous slides. So when he say no one, in the long run, we all dead, it means, so the classical theory tells us, so the economy is going to decline and eventually it's going to return, right? There's like self-regulating mechanism. So basically he says, okay, so you may not have the luxury to wait. Okay, so the pain is too lengthy, too significant. You may not able to wait until the economy to self-regulate itself. Life is short, basically. Okay, the pain is too significant. It's prolonged. So we better do something. Actually, we are able to shorten the pain, like 2008. So that's what he was trying to say, right? Okay, so now let's move to business cycle. Okay, so far I just give you a brief idea what the origin of macroeconomics. Okay. So in terms of business cycle, so it's just a fluctuation of our economy. To dealing with this fluctuation, the US government used tools to improve the economy. But again, so the reason why they use tools or the reason why they intervene in the economy is largely because the insight of Keynes, right? Because like I just explained to you, Keynes think, so there's room for us to improve, to intervene, right? But then, so what kind of tool they use? Okay, so usually there are two types of tools. One is called monetary policy. The other is called fiscal policy. So both policy trying to affect overall spending. Now just look at it here. Okay, so there's this is their policy goal. But why they want to affect spending? So this is largely because Keynesian, right? So Keynesian economics believe most of the trouble of our economy is caused by weak demand. But weak demand, so the way we can restore the weak demand is through affecting spending, right? So if you don't fully understand, don't worry. So again, this is just a preview. So we will quickly go through those details in the following lectures, right? But for now, you need to understand a couple of things. First, government proactively regulate the economy. Why? Because that's the thought of Keynesian, right? So short-term plan is too much for us to endure. Secondly, so the government, like US government, has two very different policy tools. One is monetary, the other is physical. And the third, you should differentiate what is monetary, what is physical. Monetary is through changing quantity of money and changing interest rate. But the physical policy is changing government spending and the tax. All right, okay. Now, before I show you the details of this cycle, let's just run through a few pictures. Okay, just remind you the damage a recession can cause to our economy. All right, so this image, those are images of the Great Depression in the United States during 1930s. Okay. Right. Okay. To understand business cycle, first let's just take a bird's view of our long run economy. Right. So let's start with left-hand side. So we put data from 1985 to 2014. Okay, so this is roughly 30 years. And then so we look at two data. The red one is what we call industrial production index. So essentially just measuring our production capacity. Production capacity. Okay. The other one is private sector employment. So essentially just tell us the employment, the workers who are working, so number of workers who has jobs, okay? And then from both figures, so what do we notice? So number one, they resemble each other or they catch up with each other. This is pretty straightforward because the employment or worker is one of the main factors we need to carry out production, right? So that's why they are similar. Two, so both increase over time. This is a long run trend. So this reflects economic growth, right? And then three, so that's we need to focus for now. So they fluctuate, right? Like I highlighted here. So this is 2008, 2009, the Great Recession or the financial crisis, right? Okay, so actually, so the economy is always doing that, right? So it's increasing and decline, and increasing and decline, and increasing and decline. It's like a waves, right? And so the other way to look at the same picture is to look at percentage change compared from a year earlier. And then so here, so we can see the fluctuation in a better way. Let's just say, for example, look at it here. So 2008, 2009, financial crisis. Okay. So you can see the unemployment drops, right? So this blue line is unemployment. and the production drops even further, right? So this fluctuation is what we are going to see in the following slides. Is called a business cycle. Okay. So now let's look at some definitions for us to understand business cycle. Recession, sometimes we call it contraction. Those are periods of economic downturns. So what's defined as downturn? Output, employment, they are falling. So say, for example, the Great Depression. So for example, the financial crisis. Okay, so we just goes down. And then, so we have under phase, which is called expansion. Okay, sometimes we call it recovery. So those are period of economic upturn. So we have down, now we have up. Output and employment are rising. Right? And then lastly, so we have business cycle. So this is short-term alternation between this downturn and upturn. Right? So let's go back to previous one. Okay. So what is downturn? So this is downturn. What is upturn? So this is upturn. Okay, so you have down. So you always has a hope to see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? It's not like keep declining. That is the end of the world. Okay, so you always there's some hope. But on the other hand, so if you are in a recovery, in the expansion, so everyone know the party must end. You cannot just doing this party forever. So eventually, so you're going to decline. So we're just bouncing back between this worst day and the best day. It's just bouncing back and back and forth. So this business cycle. So now we can put this business cycle in this stylized picture, right? So this line used to indicate employment or production. Okay, and then so this line is just wiggling. When this line is declining, and then we are in a recession. But once we hit the darkest moment, we start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and then we reach the top. So this is the darkest moment. There's always hope there. Now, once we reach here, and then we start to pick up. So this is called expansion. But again, so this party cannot go on forever. Okay, and then so we are reached the peak. You may be wondering what prevents us to fall to hell, or what prevents us to grow to heaven. Okay, you may be wondering that. So let's just wait a little bit towards the end of this, towards the end of the semester, so we can think about that. All right. But usually, so the economy is like bounded by the trough and the peak. There always like a boundary, right? Yes.
So is it always going to have that, like, no matter what, essentially, like you can't have an expansion, or is there like such a thing where it can always just be expanding without
As I said, it's always like that. So there's always a peak. Okay, but why is that? We may just wait a little bit. Okay, but intuitively just says, okay, so you will lose your momentum. Just like for the economy, like physically. You're going to run out of your fuel. Or put other way, just think about physical world, right? So in order for us to to go faster and faster, you need more and more energy, like physical work, right? So if you run from 0 to 100 miles per hour, you need some fuels. If you want to move from 100 miles to 200 miles per hour, so the fuel you need is extra, right? And then, so if you want to go even faster, you need more fuel or more momentum or more energy. And eventually, so the energy you need is too much, you cannot afford. Let's put it this way. So similar, so this is like similar, you can think about like there's a gravity in our economy. Similarly, right? Okay. But for now, just keep in mind, so this is always like fluctuation, up and down, right? Okay, so regarding to the recession, or this kind of answer the question, why we care about this recession, or why we care about the business cycle. Okay, this is because business cycle, particularly recession, hurts the economy. The most important effect of recession, or the worst part that hurt us, is people lose their job. People have hard time to find job. Now remember, most American, or for any economy, majority of the population relies on a stable job to pay for their bill or to feed their family. If we lose a job, lose the ability to create a job or to find a job, and then so we are going to see the pain throughout the economy. Right, so that's why we care about recession. We want to limit the pain, and we want to limit the scope of the pain, meaning just trying to minimize the fraction of people who are suffering. Right. Okay. Yeah. So there is a short video. Let's just watch once I finish this part. So in this video, there are two very different views regarding to the cause of business cycle, and certainly they have very different view regarding to how or whether the government should intervene. Right. Now let's quickly look at this practice question. The use of tax and the government spending to change the overall level of spending in the economy is called, actually, so this is fiscal policy, right? But again, so toward the end of the semester, I'm going to explain to you how fiscal policy is necessary and how the fiscal policy will help the economy. Right. The other one, do you think the government is right to begin massive spending program during deep recession? For the moment, the answer is yes, right? But certainly there are other economists don't believe that. But for now, so that is the conventional wisdom for now, right? Okay. So now let's move to long-run economic growth. Right? So this is different from business cycle, because business cycles are short-term fluctuation. So now we look at long run. So how the economy is going to behave in the very long run. Right? And to appreciate the importance of long-run economic growth, so I would like to share with you these figures. So this figure basically tells us the change in quality and quantity of standard of living. So how we understand the change in quality? So those are this is 2005. Now to compare with 1955. So today, so we are consuming those things that did not exist in 1955. So including digital camera, internet, cell phone, computer, microwave, so on and so forth. Right? So those things was not possible or just beyond their imagination back in 1950. So that refers changing quality. Right? Now, in terms of quantity, so if we look at washer and dryers, in 2005, pretty much every single American family has washer or dryer. But in 1955, right? So dryer, less than 20%, washer, less than 40%. So that's quantity. All right. So if we compare with 1905, and then so the picture is even more significant, or the comparison is more significant, right? So this refers to changing quality and quantity in terms of standard living. So those are coming from long-run economic growth, right? So the other way to see the long-run economic growth is look at real GDP per capita. Okay? So actually, right after this preview, we are going to study how we measure GDP. Right? But essentially, this real GDP per capita, so this just measuring the output or equivalently income per person. Okay. Also, this is a good measure for standard living. Okay. So this is real GDP per capita. So we can see there is a steady increase during 20th century. But certainly there's a fluctuation. Like this is Great Depression. This is World War II. Right? So to summarize, so long-run economic growth brings us prosperity, improve our standard of living. Right? And I want to close this part by emphasize long-run growth is a relatively modern phenomenon. More specifically, so this is after Industrial Revolution. So during the pre-Industrial Revolution era, the world economy hasn't grown much for thousands of years, or the standard of living almost the same for like 1,000 years, right? And here we can look at a case study to appreciate the importance of economic growth. So we look at two countries, Canada, Argentina. When they start or they kickstart at the 20th century, so these two countries are very similar. Now, during the course of 20th century, so they diverge in terms of their economic performance, okay? Largely because in Argentina, so they have political instability and high inflation, okay? And it turns out towards the end of the 20th century, so Canada's standard of living is 3 times higher compared with Argentina. Okay? So that shows you the importance of economic growth. But economic growth usually is the outcome of your economic policy. Okay. Now, we move to next topic. Again, this is a preview. This is about price level. Okay. So we are going to see inflation versus deflation. So what is inflation? So essentially, the overall price is rising. This is inflation. And deflation just says the overall price is falling. And then what is price stability? It just says the overall price change slowly or not at all. Okay? And later I'm going to explain to you. So what is the why we care about inflation and deflation, or what's the damage they're going to bring, right? But for now, let's just see, so what this means, right? So this overall level means, so we are going to look at a bunch of things, not only one thing. Like here's we look at eggs, coffee, bread, and then gasoline, right? So we just look at how those things, their price change over time. Okay? And so like here, it's already important, already shows the importance of look at price change, right? Look at it here. So over time, there's a increase in hourly wage. But at the same time, there's a rise in price level. Without knowing the change in price, you may feel, oh, so people are doing well because their income tripled, right? Because it's grow by over 200%. But it turns out, so in reality, so they have gained very little because their income grow, but at the same time, the price they paid also almost tripled, right? So they just show you the importance of looking at the price index, right? So as we are going to learn later, in the short run, inflation are closely related to business cycle. And more specifically, when economy is in a recession, is depressed, inflation usually tends to fall. On the other hand, so if the economy is booming, inflation tends to rise, right? So later, so we will have a chapter to discuss these things. So from there, you're going to see, so why this is true and what the government can do, all right? Okay, but in the long run, the overall level of price will be determined by changes in money supply. Or in other words, so the price will not correlate with the level or the quantity of the good you can produce, right? Okay, so now here, so I'm going to explain to you why we care about inflation and why we care about deflation. Okay? So inflation is going to discourage people from holding on to cash. Why? Just imagine if there's a extremely high inflation in the morning with $100, you can buy, say for example, 50 gallons of gas. Okay? And in the afternoon, so these $100 lose the value, you can only buy 5 gallons of gas. Okay? And then, so what are you going to do? So you may just trying to get gas as soon as possible, right? Otherwise, your dollar is going to lose value, right? And then in extreme case, people is going to abandon or stop to use cash altogether because the cash doesn't hold value. They prefer to hold like the physical commodity or gold, right? But you may wondering what's the problem with that? So the problem with that is, so as we're going to learn later, so the money helps to smooth the transaction, right? And also, if people stop to use the money, the government is going to lose an important source of revenue, right? Because essentially, the government can finance part of their spending via printing money, right? So you can see the inflation create big trouble. But furthermore, so inflation is going to force the individual to spend a lot of time doing shopping or unnecessary shopping because they will fear their value, so their cash is going to lose value. On the other hand, deflation is going to create other problem, right? What is deflation? In the morning, $100 buy you 50 gallons of gas, but in the afternoon can buy you 500 gallons of gas. This is called deflation. If that's the case, and then individual or business will hold down their purchase as late as possible. So that just means, so people don't want to spend their money. because their money is going to accrue values over time. Why I want to spend my money? If that's the case, that's going to make the recession even worse because no one wants to spend. Right? So summarize, both inflation and deflation creates a lot of trouble to us. So that's why we need to keep a balance in terms of price index, right? Okay, so here I want to share with you a piece of history, right? So this is coming from an old student I had. So he checked in this hotel, this is called Holiday Inn of Santa Monica. The time he checked in is, let me write down, 1972, January 19th. Okay, 50 years ago. And the rate, look at here. So this is the rate. The rate of the hotel is $15. Now, if you just go to Expedia or whatever platform you would like, so you can see in Santa Monica, oh, by the way, so the building is the same, identical. But so they changed the name. So, but still you can see the Holiday Inn, but they have other name, right? And now oh, by the way, so yeah, so just make sure this is like 120 Colorado Avenue, right? So 120 Colorado Avenue, okay? The zip code is the same. And then, so now the price can easily go to $300 from 15 to 250 in 50 years. So this is called inflation, right? And actually, so this inflation or price index help you to understand, like say, for example, you read a novel. Okay, so a novel just happens in 1970. So they talk about the amount of transaction. So from here, so you have a sense. So say, for example, a $1 back then means what? All right, okay. So now regarding to preview, so this is a last topic. Okay. So we are going to look at international imbalances. Right. So first of all, the United States and most of the economy in today's world is an open economy. Okay. To understand what is the open economy, just give you a counter example, a closed economy. North Korea is largely a closed economy. Okay. Either because of their policy or because of sanction. So basically, so they don't do trade with others or legal trade, right? So in terms of open economy, and then we have two terms, trade deficit, trade surplus. What is trade deficit? It just means, so we export less than we import. So export means we sell to the rest of the world. Import means we purchase, we buy from the rest of the world. Export means income, and import means spending as a nation. So trade deficit means, and then it just means, so we spend more than we earn. And on the contrary, trade surplus means we export more than import. We sell more than we buy. We earn more than we spend. Okay, so this is trade surplus versus trade deficit. Right. So why there's trade deficit and trade surplus? It's because first, so there's a theory of comparative advantage, right? So people can benefit from trading with each other, right? So in the first place, we have trade. But with trade, and then so you could run surplus or could run deficit. Okay. Now here I just show you in the reality which country is running surplus, which country is running deficit. Okay. So United States, we are running deficit, and we are running deficit with Germany, with China, and then with Saudi Arabia. But running deficit itself is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because the reason why we run deficit is because we know, we understand, we can benefit from trade. Okay, so we just import what others are good at, and we sell what we are good at. But if a significant amount of trade deficit for a prolonged period, that can cause trouble. Because essentially trade deficit means we borrow from the rest of the world to finance our spending. If we borrow too much, such that we can't afford to pay back, that's going to create some problem down the road. All right. Okay, so let's look at another practice questions. So this year, the value of a country's import is equal to 1.2, and the value of export is 1.3. And clearly export exceed import. So it's running a trade surplus, right? Okay. Okay, so let me just close this lecture with this slide, and then so we can just watch the short video. Okay. So this is just another case study, show us importance of understanding macroeconomics, understanding the business cycle. Okay. So here we show the price index, right? And price index fluctuates over time. And as I just mentioned earlier, and we are going to study in detail later. So usually when the economy is in a slump or hit by the recession, the price level will decline, we have deflation. When the economy is in recovery mode, and then so we have inflation. So this is a principle of macroeconomics will teach us. Now, in reality, there's one company, Montgomery Ward. They survived the Great Depression means here. So the way they survive is by cut costs and hoarding cash. Now, in a time period of deflation, you're hoarding your cash, you're going to keep the value. Actually, you're going to make money by being patient, right? So that's how they survive. But in 1940, so they were expecting the same things happen. They continue to hoarding cash, right? But then, so instead of deflation, there was inflation. Now, if there's inflation hoarding cash, you're going to lose your cash value. All right, so that's the lessons. So we should learn, or we should study macroeconomics. Now, let's just watch these short videos, and then so we finish this quick review or quick preview for macroeconomics.
Tell them I've arrived. And then tell them I've arrived.
And your name is?
Hayek. F.A. Hayek. Freddie. Kane. Hey, listen, party at the Fed. All right, 20 minutes. Lobby. John Maynard Keynes. F.A. Hayek. Yeah, we're opposed
We oppose each other philosophically.
in the same studio.
We've been going back and forth for a century.
I want to steer markets.
I want them set free. There's a boom and bust cycle and good reason to fear it. Blame low interest rates.
It's the animal spirit. John Maynard Keynes wrote the book on modern macro, the man you need when the economy's off track. Depression, recession, now your question's in session. Have a seat and I'll school you with one simple lesson. 1929, the big crash. We didn't bounce back, economy's in the trash. Persistent unemployment, the result of sticky wages. Waiting for recovery, that's outrageous. I had a real plan, any fool can understand. The advice real simple, who's aggregate demand? CIG altogether gets to Y. Keep that total growing, watch the economy fly.
We've been going back and forth for a century.
I want to steer markets.
I want them set free. There's a boom and bust cycle and good reason to fear it. Blame low interest rates.
It's the animal spirit. You see, it's all about spending. Hear the register cha-ching. Circular flow, the dough is everything. So if that flow is getting low, doesn't matter the reason. We need more government spending. Now it's stimulus season, so forget about saving. Get it straight out of your head. Like I said, in the long run, we're all dead. Savings is destruction. That's the paradox of thrift. Don't keep money in your pocket or that growth will never lift, because business is driven by the animal spirits, the bull and the bear, and there's reasons to fear its effects on capital investment, income, and growth. That's why the state should fill the gap with stimulus, both the monetary and the fiscal. They're equally correct. Public works, digging ditches, war has the same effect. Even a broken window helps the glass man have some wealth. The multiplier driving higher the economy's health. And if the central bank's interest rate policy tanks, a liquidity trap, that new money stuck in the banks. Deficits could be the cure you've been looking for. Let the spending soar now that you know the score. My general theories made quite an impression. Revolution. I transformed the econ profession. You know me, modesty, still I'm taking a bow. So say it loud and say it proud. We're all Keynesians now.
We've been going back and forth for a century.
I want to steer markets.
I want them set free. There's a boom and bust cycle and good reason to fear it.
I made my case ready, H. Listen up, can you hear it?
I'll begin in broad strokes, just like my friend Keynes. His theory conceals the mechanics to change. That simple equation, too much aggregation, ignores human action and motivation. Justification for bailouts, payoffs by polls with machinations. You provide them with cover to sell us a free lunch. Then all that we're left with is debt and a bunch. If you're living high on that cheap credit hog, don't look for a cure from the hair of the dog. Real savings come first if you want to invest. The market coordinates time with interest. Your focus on spending is pushing on Fred. In the long run, my friend, it's your theory that's dead. So sorry there, buddy, if that sounds like invective. Prepare to get schooled in my Austrian perspective. We've been going back and forth for a century.
I want to steer markets.
I want them set free. There's a boom and bust cycle and good reason to fear it. Blame low interest rates.
It's the animal spirit.
The place you should study isn't the bust, it's the boom that should make you feel leery. That's the thrust of my theory. The capital structure is key. Malinvestments wreck the economy. The boom gets started with an expansion of credit. The Fed sets rates low. Are you starting to get it? That new money is confused for real loanable funds, but it's just inflation that's driving the ones who invest in new projects like housing construction. The boom plants the seeds for its future destruction. The savings aren't real, consumption's up too, and the grasping for resources reveals there's too few. So the boom turns to bust as the interest rates rise. For the cost of production, price signals relies. The boom was a binge, that's a matter of fact. Now it's devalued capital that makes up the slack. Whether it's the late 20s or 2005, booming bad investment seems like they'd thrive. You must save to invest, don't use the printing press, or a bust will surely follow, an economy depressed. Your so-called stimulus will make things worse. Just more of the same, more incentives perverse, and that credit crunch ain't a liquidity trap, just a broke banking system. I'm done, that's a wrap. We've been going back and forth for a century.
I want to steer markets.
I want them set free. There's a boom and bust cycle and good reason to fear it. Blame low interest rates.
It's the animal spirit. The ideas of economists and political philosophers, both when they are right and when they are wrong, are more powerful than is commonly understood. Indeed, the world is ruled by little else. Practical men who believe themselves to be quite exempt from any intellectual influence are usually the slaves of some defunct economist.
The curious task of economics is to demonstrate to men little they really know about what they imagine they can design.